Pathologic 3 was announced on October 7th, 2024 for a mid-2025 release. And one thing that has myself and many others torn is the fact that the gameplay for Pathologic 3 has drastically shifted from what we're used to in Pathologic Classic and in Pathologic 2. In Pathologic 2, we played as Artemy Burak in an open-world horror RPG, but the Bachelor will have a completely different playstyle in Pathologic 3. I don't think these changes we're seeing in gameplay are random. Truthfully, I don't think anything IPL ever does is random. But I think once we examine it from all of the different angles and perspectives, we're going to find that these gameplay changes are super exciting and will tell a more complete story. I completely understand feeling torn about the different gameplay. As someone who, for better or for worse, entered the series with Pathologic 2, there's something so nostalgic about wandering through the town that you've spent so much blood, sweat, and tears in trying to save, and seeing the real-time outcomes of your actions. I imagine those who played Pathologic Classic will feel very similar. That being said, I think what we're going to experience in Pathologic 3, like I said, will not only expand our understanding of The Bachelor, but tell a more complete and well-thought-out story than if we just got another version of the Haruspecs route from The Bachelor's perspective. In this video today, I want to dive into the gameplay of Pathologic 3, what IPL has said about these differences, because as of recently they've said quite a bit, and the reasons I believe the gameplay has changed as a whole. Before getting into it, though, I want to state that this is just my opinion. The amazing thing about the Pathologic universe is that people can play through the various iterations of the game and come away with a very different understanding of what happened in that game. I will try my best to voice when I'm giving an opinion versus referencing an IPL statement or direct gameplay, but please let me know where you agree or disagree. I would love to hear it. A couple of different disclaimers before we get too deep into everything. Firstly, this video has been in the works for about a month. I started working on it right after the trailer, but unfortunately, my apartment was flooded by Hurricane Milton, so I was doing a lot of moving around. So that's partly why this is about 2 or 3 weeks later than I wanted it to be. But also, now that I'm finally in this new location and set up, I am now sick. So I'm sorry if I sound nasally and congested. Ideally, I could just push it back further, but I'm getting a little antsy, and this is something I really want to talk about. So hopefully my voice isn't too terrible, and yeah, let's dive in. Hey you guys, what's going on? It's Cobbs in the future. As some of you may know, on Tuesday, we got a lot of really cool stuff from the Save and Sound Festival regarding Pathologic 3. None of that will be discussed in today's video because this was recorded the Monday before the Save and Sound Festival because it's already like 3 weeks late. I still think a lot of stuff in this video is really relevant. It goes over a lot of just high-level, basic narrative differences and how it relates to the gameplay we're going to see in Pathologic 3. So I encourage you to watch it, but if you're more interested in some of the stuff we saw in the Save and Sound Festival, I did do a quick video on the Apathy and Psychosis meter that you should go check out. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy. Firstly, I do want to point out that on November 1st, we got a huge update from them over on Steam, them being IPL. If you haven't seen it yet, I would definitely go check it out. I will have the link for this in the description below. But essentially what they did is they addressed a lot of the different questions that people have been coming forward with regarding Pathologic 3. I'm not going to go through all of it because a lot of this I do end up discussing in my video, which as someone who's had this script for 3 weeks now, it is very rewarding to see that a lot of what I was going to talk about was confirmed by IPL. But I do want to highlight a couple of statements from them that I think will be relevant. One thing I harped about quite a bit in my trailer analysis, and I plan on discussing further in this video, is the fact that these 3 protagonists are very different and are approaching the town of the Gorkin with very different tools, mindsets, and perspectives. And that is the main reason for why we are getting different gameplay than we would see with the Haruspecs. The first thing they really address in the FAQ on Steam is what happened to the Bachelor route for Pathologic 2. Has it evolved into a sequel? And so they say, yes, essentially this is exactly what happened. And then further into that discussion, they say, now, these are truly 3 separate protagonists with unique worldviews, perceptions of reality, and distinct tools. From a gameplay perspective, this means 3 different approaches and a complete rethinking of the original scripts. This is honestly everything I feel like I've been talking about to myself and to anyone who will listen to me talk about Pathologic. Not only do the Haruspecs and the Bachelor come from very different backgrounds, but they also have very different tools and are looking at very different parts of the town. The Haruspecs has lived his life kind of in between the steppe culture and the, I don't want to call them the normal townspeople, but for lack of a better term, the non-step people, the normal townspeople in town, and has honestly lived his life between the two of them. So it makes sense to me that when he comes back, that is primarily the population he is concerned with, just the population as a whole, the people on the ground, the ones who are being infected by the plague, all of these different aspects of his community that he grew up in. Whereas the Bachelor is coming to this town for a very different reason than Artemy did. He didn't grow up here. He has this very educated background and is looking at this, honestly, kind of like one giant math problem. That's really more of an opinion piece. I don't know if the Bachelor is looking at this like a math problem, but I do know that he's looking at this from a very different perspective as someone who didn't grow up in the town and is unfamiliar with not only the people of the town, but step culture and step magic as a whole. Not only that, he has a very different educational background than Artemy and has different tools to approach this whole sand pest plague problem. They say further on that the Haruspects needed to survive, fight, scavenge, rummage through garbage for scraps of bread, and try to save those he had held dear along the way. The Bachelor is a man of intellect. Survival is not his primary concern. His goals go beyond what one lifetime could contain. He needs to think, formulate theories, and gather evidence. Ultimately, he must issue commands and observe the results. The distinction will be emphasized through gameplay, mechanics, objectives, soundtracks, and so on. The Haruspects was very much in a very survival, horror-esque gameplay style, because truly his day-to-day was resource management. It was management of the people who he could save and immunize in time, but also just management of being able to eat enough, sleep enough, drink enough. I'll get more into the more specifics of the Bachelor's gameplay style and how it differs from Artemy's and the Haruspects as a whole, but I do think it's important to acknowledge that the main thing that it seems IPL is trying to highlight here is that these three protagonists, and specifically right now the Haruspects and the Bachelor, have very different tools and approaches to this problem and to this town, and that is the main reason for the gameplay differing so drastically between the two games. I haven't played Classic, so I can't say it with super strong certainty, but I think if we just got another Haruspects route, except with the Bachelor as the protagonist, we wouldn't get the full thematic and narrative impact of the Bachelor's story that we would get out of Pathologic 3, or that we will get out of Pathologic 3. I think Pathologic 3 is going to put us in the mind of the Bachelor in a very interesting way, and we're going to see how his mind works, why it works that way, and how he's sorting through all of these problems, and I'm really excited to see it. I had a few other sources, teletypes throughout the years, their Kickstarter page, and different things IPL has said that shows their approach to telling this story and why it's going to be different. And I was going to talk about them today, but I really don't think they have the same impact as this Steam FAQ does, because they are saying the same exact thing the Steam FAQ does. I think the main thing with IPL is these are very different people, and the reason this gameplay is different is because these people are different. So I could go through every single source that I had collected to talk about in this video, but I think we would just be restating a lot of the same information. And honestly, I think one of the thousands of takeaways from Pathologic as a series is that although the three routes are similar in that they are all approaching the same problem, you walk away with a very different understanding of the town and the Gorgon. And that, again, is because these three protagonists available to you are so different and unique. And I think what's really cool about this is that although this is a video game, it reflects a very human thing. Humans are also different and unique, that we often can go through the same type of event or same event as a whole and come away with very different reactions and understandings of that event. And I think that is the main phenomena that IPL is trying to get across with these three routes. I'm continuing to say three routes because I am manifesting the Changeling route at some point before I die. In the Steam FAQ, they said they prefer not to make promises prematurely, so they will return to her when there is more to share. I'm all for let's get the Bachelor route finished and put out that product and really see through that entire project as a whole. But as someone who never played through Classic, I've never played through Clara's route, and she scares me. She scares me a little bit, and I'm really excited to see what they potentially do with her. So, fingers crossed for Pathologic 4, or Pathologic 4.5. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do that. But moving on from IPL statements and what they've said about Pathologic 3, I want to get into the gameplay and what we know about it. I originally thought that this was going to be a shorter section, but 3 single-spaced pages later, that did not happen. If you want a deeper dive into some of the gameplay mechanics, I discuss a lot of them in the specifics of them in my trailer analysis that will be linked below. But thematically, as stated before, the Bachelor and Haruspex have very different roles within the town and are dealing with very different obstacles. While the Haruspex is coming back to his hometown, attempting to regain his reputation within the town, and trying to save the members of his community, the Bachelor is not in those same trenches. The Bachelor is a healer like Artemy is, but he is a healer focused on prevention, not the cure. Of course, Artemy is running around like a chicken with its head cut off because he's literally 1v1ing the plague, but Daniil is also 1v1ing this plague, but he's not fighting over the townspeople the same way Artemy is. Additionally, Artemy's gameplay, as stated before, is focused on eating enough to survive long enough to save people, potentially. The Bachelor is not going to need to worry about where his next meal is coming from, or even worrying about immunity boosting the citizens. His primary objective is developing a vaccine to save the remaining people of this town. Artemy spends a good chunk of his time trying to help those at risk or those already infected. The Bachelor is focusing on ensuring the town's available resources are used to the best of their ability, and that there is a vaccine to protect what is left of the town. Artemy's resource management is very survival-focused: food, water, sickness, sleep. Daniil's is focused on the health of the town as a whole. On day 4 in Pathologic 2, Lara asks Artemy to bring water barrels to her district. This is part of how you find out Daniil has set up an operation to quarter off infected water. We can see this project as part of his planning notes in one of the Steam screenshots, which I think is a great example of the tasks the Bachelor will be facing. Not decisions between who gets immunized, but decisions almost likened to that of a city manager. I think something else important to highlight here too is the main reason the Bachelor is in the town to begin with. Spoilers for this part of the story. I will keep it pretty high level and basic, but if you do want to skip like really minor backstory spoilers, click to the time on the screen. The Bachelor comes to the town of the Gorkon to study Simon Kane, someone who has been able to defy death in a way that warrants his study. This is because the Bachelor is studying the field of thanatology, the study of death and dying. Daniil's primary research is focused on how to prevent death, and that is something Simon Kane has historically been able to do. While things do not go to plan for Mr. Dankovsky, or I should say Dr. Dankovsky, he is still there to prove his research. I won't go further into how he plans to do that, but his attempts to prove and solve immortality are intrinsically tied to the survival of the town, which gives him plenty of motivation to keep this big old dysfunctional ship afloat. Now that we understand how the Bachelor's motivation is different, let's discuss the actual gameplay differences. In Classic, all 3 protagonists play through 12 chronological days and have very similar survival mechanics. Hunger, thirst, the likes. Things we've already discussed. In Pathologic 3, we have confirmed that time travel and non-linear gameplay will be a major focus of the Bachelor's route. In the trailer, you see the Bachelor and a figure going over various images showing the outcomes of the plague. Death, destruction, just overall chaos. The Bachelor has internal dialogue shown on screen during these portions, saying things to the effect of, "No, that's not how it happened," and commenting on the differences he recalls between the images and his memory. This is alluding to the mechanic of time travel that we will have available to him in Pathologic 3. We have this confirmed in several different places, but it was in a teletype that we received a few years ago. Therefore, Dankovsky should perceive time not mundanely, but differently. Changing his concerns about time, he would start to use it as a tool to understand not the physiological immortality of the cell, but the immortality of man as a thinking unit. I believe this is showing us how the Bachelor fundamentally views time differently than the Haruspex. While Artemy is fighting against the clock, the Bachelor is using it as part of his scientific method. This is also alluded to on Steam. You have only 12 days to stop the lethal plague, but in your hands lies the most valuable resource: time. Travel to the future to witness the worst outcomes. Correct mistakes in the past to change them. Bend the fates of people around you to save or condemn you in search of answers. So, we're time traveling. Thematically, to me, this makes sense for the Bachelor. Already we know that time is something that the Bachelor is studying in terms of a human's biological clock. Eventually it will run out. But the Bachelor is working to pause it and in ways manipulate it. Here lies his ability to jump around the timeline of Artemy's top 12 worst days. But IPL also places great emphasis on the fact that the Bachelor is an analyst. He sees things differently and studies them with a much more focused eye. Bachelor is rational and solves this problem in the opposite way. He is an egoist, a man of his mind, and an analyst. That's why he does not connect what has been disassembled, but on the contrary, breaks the world into its component parts. He comes to the city to make sure that some individual, Homo sapiens, has learned to live forever. To understand this trick about the technique of achieving immortality, he needs to reconsider the main categories of the world. That includes the nature of time, space, and the causality. This is not the only time he's mentioned as an analyst. There's also a mechanic we're going to see in Pathologic 3 that is discussed in a VK post that I dive really hard into a trailer analysis, so I'm not going to go over it here again, but he is also described as an analyst there, with the first part of this statement being, a bachelor is first of all an analyst, an attentive and focused observer. So, my man's an analyst. But to kind of wrap this portion up, the Bachelor is trained to see patterns and to break things apart and to see how they come back together. That is at least my theory on how this will make sense. Note here, we're in Theoryville right now. We're in Cobb's Opinionville. He's an analyst trained to see cause and effect, and that is what lends him his in-game time travel ability. The way I'm understanding it, at least, is that in this time traveling piece that he's able to do with Pathologic 3, it's actually, in some form or fashion, him thinking through actions in present day, which, maybe he's just actually time traveling. I don't know. But I like to think that in them describing him so heavily as an analyst, that this time travel function is actually just a function of hindsight and foresight. There's also a whole other theory floating around that he is in fact playing these days on a loop. My favorite part of this theory is that in Pathologic 2, when you go to visit Ruben as Artemy, Daniil is there waiting for you instead. The theory goes here that the Bachelor has been playing these 12 days on a loop, and in one of the earlier timelines, Ruben kills Artemy when Artemy goes to his house. So, to avoid this, Daniil goes there, gets Ruben out of the house, and meets Artemy there, preventing his death. Another piece of the supporting evidence that I've seen is the Marble Nest DLC, which is the same day played over and over again. I don't really have the time or knowledge to say if this theory has any weight to it, but I do think it's super fucking cool. But like I said, there's also a lot of mechanical gameplay elements that can add to these differences, and I think really kind of flesh out the Bachelor's tool set, but I'm not going to go into them today. I really kind of wanted to do a narrative and thematic focus on these differences and why I think we're seeing different gameplay, and I think we've kind of done that today. But to sum up everything, I think there are many reasons we will not have open world Pathologic 3. In my personal opinion, I do think we will have various town on the Gorkin set pieces where we can walk around and investigate, but we will not have free roam the way Artemy did, which to me makes sense because the Bachelor does not need to go explore the entire town. That man has 1,000 things on his to-do list, and none of them require going around to talk and see how everyone is doing. One of his main gameplay mechanics that, again, I talk about in the trailer analysis that you should go watch, is a hospital set piece where we will be interviewing and investigating outlier victims, which outlier meaning people who have survived longer than 5 hours. It looks really, really cool, and it makes me think that investigating the plague as an organism itself will be a huge chunk of the Bachelor's gameplay. I believe there will be times where we are walking around parts of the town, but only in relation to a clue or a piece of the puzzle we are missing. This will be the primary function of the time travel, in my opinion. Seeing an outcome, connecting what we did to cause it, and then going back in time to collect clues on how to change it. Additionally, I believe we will be doing a great deal of investigating the plague itself, how it's affecting the town. While it felt like Artemy was focused on the plague on a person-to-person level, I think the Bachelor will be viewing the town more holistically and viewing the plague's effects from that perspective. It certainly would fall in line with his resource management and what I think that will look like. But that is all the time I have for today, and marbles, truth be told. So thank you so much for watching. Again, this video was supposed to come out a couple of weeks ago, so a lot of it is me restating a lot that now IPL has confirmed, but I wanted to get this video out there and throw around some ideas with you guys. If you've watched this far in the video, I really appreciate you and would very much appreciate a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment, leave a nice smiley face, whatever you feel so inclined to do. And on top of that, you can come hang out with us in Discord, where we talk about a lot of different stuff, but we also discuss Pathologic. By the time this video is coming out, I will probably be out of town, but I do primarily stream on Twitch. Usually Wednesday through Saturday. We play Pathologic too, but we also play a lot of other games, so would love to see you over on Twitch as well as YouTube. Also, a quick shout out to my good friend Make, who is my sounding board for a lot of these videos and actually put together a really good thought piece on the differences between Classic and Pathologic 2, which I will have that linked in the description below as well, along with her Twitter. You should go check out both. But thank you again, like I said, for watching. Much appreciate it. Sorry that I sound really nasally and gross. But not much I can do about it, I guess. Thank you again, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.